I mean, is Bob a problem? No. No.
She's right there.
Yes, that sounded like.
Are you ready?
What page should we start on?
You're right. You might ask a question.
Are you ready?
Carol, you'll be happy to know that I just had to ask Ron what page we start on. I rely on you so heavily. And we're thinking about you and the others on Zoom. I invite you to, so many of you are wide awake and ready to daven, as are the folks in the sanctuary at this time. So I invite our Zoom room and our sanctuary room, to the Zoomagog and the Roomagog, to come together at this time to be a synagogue.
Okay.
And on behalf of Carol, I
No,
invite
I can
Rebecca
do it.
Weston up for davening.
I can do it.
We turn to page 65. Please rise.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan לנו בינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשני בצלמו. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשני ישראל. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשני בת חורים. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam פוקח עבריים. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malish avrumim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokiv kefufim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasali kol tzarki. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten hayaref koach.
You may be seated.
ותנינו היום וכל יום, לכן חסד ורחמים בעיניך, ובעיניך רואינו ותתמלאנו חסדים טובים. ברוך אתה אדוני, גומר חסדים טובים לעמו ישראל. אשרינו שאנחנו משכימים ומעריבים, ערב ובוקר ואומרים פעמיים בכל יום, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. קדש את שמך מקדישי שמך, וקדש את שמך בעולמך, ובישועתך תביא ותגביח קרננו, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש את שמך ברבים.
Our service will continue on the top of page 80.
ודוד אדוני אורי איש, ימיני עירה. ואולי האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, Kaveh el Adonai, Chazak v'ya'ametz libecha, v'kaveh el Adonai. Mizmor shir Chanukat habayit v'David. הפכת מספרי למחולי, פיתחת סקיבתס ומשמחה, למען יזמרך כבוד ולא יתום, אדוני אלוהי לעולם אותך.
Mourner's Kaddish on page 82 for those who are grieving at this time or otherwise are saying the Kaddish. Please rise and recite with me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei almaya, yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehe shlama Rabbah min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May their memories continue to bring blessings to this world. We all rise on page 83 for Baruch Shamar.
Baruch Shamar v'hayalam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu Sever Shit, Baruch Hu Mev Yosef, Baruch Hu Zer Mekayim, Baruch Merachem ha'aretz, Baruch Merachem ha'briot, Baruch Meshalem Zachar Tov L'Rehav, Baruch Chai La'ad V'Kayam L'Netzach, Baruch Bodeh Matzil, Baruch Shemo. Yachid Chei Ha'olamim, Melech Meshubach V'Vorad Ad Shemo HaGadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Mechula Batish V'Chod.
We may be seated. As we continue the service on page 84 and go forward, you'll realize we'll continue with many silences and ends of psalms accented. This is a time for us to allow a word or a phrase from the great poetry of the Bible into our hearts, and maybe meditate on a word here or a phrase there or a line here and there in the silences between the words that Rebecca is saying out loud.
Hodu l'Adonai kiru v'shmo, hodu v'amim alilotav shivu. Ki gadol Adonai m'kula ma'od, v'norachlo kol Elohim, ki kol Elohei ha'amim Elohim, Adonai shamayim asa. Hod v'hadar lefanav oz v'cheta bimkomo ha'u. Romamnu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lahadon raglav kadoshu. Romamnu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lahar kadsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. V'hu rachum yichaper von v'lo yashchit. V'her balachashiv apo v'lo ya'ir kol chamato atzah. Adonai Tzvaot, Asheram Botech Bach, Adonai Hoshia, Hamelech Yaninu Yom Korehu, Hoshia et Hamecha V'rechet Nachalatecha, Urim V'naseim Ad Haolam. Ashreham shetachalo, Ashreham shadonai Elohav, Ani b'chasecha v'tachti ageli b'yishuatecha, Ashiv al Adonai ki gamal alai.
Service continues on page 91.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, et shem Adonai, hallelujah, avdei Adonai. Beit Yisrael baruch hu et Adonai, Beit Aharon baruch hu et Adonai, Beit HaLevi baruch hu et Adonai, Yirei Adonai baruch hu et Adonai, Baruch Adonai Mitzion, Shochen Yerushalayim, Hallelujah.
It's customary to stand for Psalm 136 on page 92.
Hodu Adonai ki tov, ki l'olam chastod. Noten nachem lecho basar, ki l'olam chasto. Hodu le'el hashamayim, ki l'olam chasto.
You're seated, and we continue on the next page.
Rananu tzadikim Adonai, la'esherim navat tehillah. Hodu. Yevo yismach libenu, ki v'shem parusho v'atachnu, chasech Adonai aleinu kasher yichanu lach, mizmor shir liom hashabbat. Odinu v'masevad, shenim baranim yilu, lahagit yashar Adonai tzuriglav lahatapo. Adonai malach yeyush lavesh Adonai os hitazar aftik tikon, tevel balti mahot. Mikvot my rabbi matiri mishmari hamatir b'mavom Adonai edotecha ne'emnu me'od levetkana avakodesh Adonai liorech yamim yichvod Adonai li'olam yismach Adonai b'ma'asav v'yishem. V'urachmicha perabon v'lo yashchit v'hirbala hashiva po v'lo ya'ir chachamato Adonai Hoshia ha'melech yanenu v'yom korenu.
Service continues with the Ashrei, page 96.
Ashrei yoshvei beitelcha od yehalucha sela she'amsha. Tehillat Adonai yedaber pi, v'varechu basar shem kudsho li'olam va'ed, v'anachnu nevarecha me'at havi Adolam, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, nafshi et Adonai, achalala Adonai b'chayai. Yimloch Adonai li'olam, Elohai ch'tzion l'dor v'dor, hallelujah. Hallelujah, ki tov samra Eloheinu, ki na'im navat tehillah abonim. Mahagit Rav Yaakov, Chukav Mishpatav Yisrael, Lo Asachem Lechochoi, Umishpatim Bal Yita'um, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Et Adonai min Hashamayim, Hallelujah, Hamramim. Vayarem keren yamo, tehillah lecho chasitav, livnei Yisrael am krovo, hallelujah. Hallelujah, shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, tehillah tobikha chasidim yismach. לשמחכם מזיקים ונכבדיכם בחבלי ברזל, לעשות בהם משפט כתוב, הדרכו לכל חסידיו, הללויה. הללויה, הללויה אל בקודשו, הללויה יקירו זוהו. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tziltzei shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tziltzei trua. Kol hanshama tehallel. Hallelujah, hallelujah, kol hanshama tehallel. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai le'olam amen, yamim. Baruch Shem kvodo le'olam, v'malech kvodo ad kol haaretz, amen, yamim.
We rise as the service continues 101.
Vayavarach David et Adonai Elaine kohachacha, vayomer David baruch. Ata hu Adonai Elohim asher bacharta b'Avram v'hirtzeta merakastim v'samta shemo Avraham u'matzata et levavo ne'eman lefanecha v'chavoti mo habris latzeit et eretz hakna'aniyah. והים בקצה לפניהם, ויברו בתוכם ביבשה, ואת רודפיכם ישלח צבים סולות, כמו אבן במים עזיים. ויוש אדוני ביום ההוא את ישראל. וירא ישראל את היד הגדולה, אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויראו העם את אדוני, ויאמינו באדוני, ובמשה עבדו. אז ישיר משה ובני ישראל את השירה הזאת לאדוני, ויאמר לאמור. כי לאדוני המלוכה משה בגויים, ועלו מושים בהר ציון לשפוט את הריסיו, והייתה לאדוני המלוכה, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You're seated, we continue on 104.
נשמת כל חי, תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהים. נהלך אנשבך ונפארך, וברך את שם קודשך כאמור, לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני, בכל קרבי את שם קודשו. האל בתעצומות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורתך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא.
Yeshar Kochech to Rebecca. Thank you for so beautifully leading us through the preliminary service. Ron Sussman comes forward to conclude the preliminary service. We're on 105 in the middle. We're calling upon all of the presence of God in all of nature and around us, that we can attest to it. And Makalot Rivavot Tamcha Beit Yisrael. Let the gatherings of Jews everywhere take place at this time, joining with both the celestial voices above, the earthly voices of everything that is alive on earth in a song that will lead us to the Shema.
Shochen ad maharon v'kadosh shemo. V'fi yesharim titalal v'divrei tzadikim titbarach v'lishon chasidim titromam u'v'kerev kadoshim titkadash u'v'makalot rivavot amacha beit Yisrael. Shekein chovat kol yitzrim l'fanu. I don't know. Lehodot, lehalel, leshabech, lefaer, leromem, lehader, levarech, lealeu, lekales, al kol divrei shirot v'tish b'chot, David ben Yishai, Abdecha Meshichecha.
We rise 106.
Ishtabach Shimcha la'ad malkeinu, V'el melech hagadol. Brachot v'hodaot me'ata v'ad olam. Baruch ata Adonai el melech gadol batishbachot el hahodot Adonai niflaot habocher shirei zimra melech elchei ha'olamim. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah V'alamad divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon v'chayedecho beit Yisrael b'gala u'v'zman kariv imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah nevarach li'olam u'le'omel maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vitadar, vitalev, vitalal, shmei kudisha, berichu, le'elat min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechmata, damiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Baruchu et Adonai ha'mevorach. Baruch Adonai ha'mevorach le'olam va'ed.
We may be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol yoducha v'hakol yeshabechucha. Ein kirkach Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh ve'ein zulat kamav kedul chayei ha'olam haba efes biltecha go'aleinu limot hamashiach ve'ein domel chamoshienu litchiyat hametim.
108.
El Adon al kol ha'ma'asim baruch v'vorach b'fi kol neshama God loveth tuvo malei olam da'atu tvuna sof v'imoto hamidga achayot hakodesh v'nedar b'chavod al hamerkava zechutu mishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chavoto Govimio roche bara Eloheinu yitzara b'da'at b'vina uv'haskel koach ugvura natan b'hem liot moshlim b'kerev tevel meleim ziv u'mefikim noga na'e zivam b'chol ha'olam zemechim b'tzeitam v'sasim Osim be'ema ritzon konam V'yer v'chavod notnim lishmo Tzahalaverin al zecher malchuto Kara l'shemesh v'yisrach or Ra v'hitkin tzurat halvana Shevach notnim lo Kol tzeva amaram tiferet ugedula Serafim ve'ofanim חיות הקודש לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים ביום השם. יפיך יפרו ירחו צובה. מהשמיים ממעל הארץ מתחת. ברח צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו בורא קדושים נשתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים וכולם עושים באימה ובירא רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה וטהרה, בשירה וזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל, המלך הגדול, הגיבור והנורא קדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם ומלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה. להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ורוח ונימה קדושה, כולם כחרונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. ואופנים בחיות הקודש, ברעש גדול מתנסים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך נמות גיתנו למלך הקדם. מורי ורפואות נוראתי לא דנו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
Service continues on page 111 as we prepare for our main line, our one line of sort of creed and catechism on the top of 112, which is the Shema. I'm sorry, Ron, that was the wrong explanation of that.
Avarabba Avtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla Gedola V'Tifra Chamata Aleinu. V'ha'erinenu b'toratecha v'dahbek libeinu b'mitzvotecha v'yached levav v'ulira et shemecha v'lo nevos le'olam va'ed v'lo nevos le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kod v'angora b'hatachnu nagila v'nismecha nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha v'havienu l'shalom Yarba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu omemiu le'artzenu ki el poel Yeshua data uvanu v'charta mikolam v'lashon v'keiravtanu l'shimcha gadol Selah Selah be'emet lehodot lecha uliyachedcha be'ahava Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha V'chol meodecha V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele Asher Anochi mitzavecha Hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvelechtecha v'derech, uveshachbecha, uvekumecha, shartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha, uchatavtam, al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha, v'haya. Come on, you're moving it. Oh, Adam. You'll be right. I'll show them more. Eretz Mitzrayim. Adonai Elohechem Emet. V'yatziv nachon v'yam v'shem. Lidor Vator hu kayam ushmo kayam v'chiso nachon u'malchuto v'emunato la'ad kayamet u'duvarav chaim kayim. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu malkeinu melech avotenu go'aleinu go'el avotenu yotzreinu tzu yeshuatenu Podenu umatzilenu me'olam shemecha ein Elohim zulatecha Ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam magenu Mashiach.
We're on page 114 in the prayer book. We're preparing at the bottom of the page. We'll be standing for the final 3 lines and heading into standing silent prayer. I realize we have guests today, and I'm so grateful for your attention, especially for those unfamiliar with a service. The Saturday morning service is our big service of the week, and it's the longest. And I ask you to think of it if you're new to it, or maybe if you're very familiar with it already. I think of it, my dad loved opera, and I couldn't believe he could sit on Saturday afternoon coming home from synagogue and listen to 3 hours in Italian and enjoy every moment of it. I also wondered why he played his opera louder than I played Jimi Hendrix, but that's the way it was in my home. I guess I knew where I got it from, why I have trouble hearing today. And so it is like an opera. It takes place in 3 or 4 acts. It's in a foreign language, but the emotions of it and the poetry of it sometimes shines through. Almost better not to translate it, or perhaps certainly. So here we are. We had a prologue, which was that we were taken through in such a beautiful way, mostly silence and individuals showing up, joining with the choir, poetry and silence of the Psalms. We entered the first act, and here we're at the climax of the first act, which is the God of nature, the God of the universe. We sang of everything alive making sound that God hears as a symphony. Then when we did the Baruch Hu and stood up and Ron took over, we then said that everything that's made of energy and of light in the entire universe is heard by God in its frequencies of sound. And that's going to be very important for Adira's Haftarah today. So I'm going to ask you to remember that when we get to Adira's Haftarah, which is much of that is drawn from actually the words of the anonymous prophet we call Isaiah number 2. And so that every frequency of energy in the universe is heard as music, and then the invisible universes that intersect with our own, or this it is part of this drama, this opera, they join in, the angels or the invisible dimensions that intersect. We said the Shema, which is all of it's part of one system. And now we're at this crucial transition of 114. On 114, we remind ourselves that it's only when we're free that we truly have the time to experience the gratitude and understand all of this and then bring it into action. So the Micha Mocha that Ron will be leading in a moment is the song of us being saved from slavery in Egypt. And it's a reminder that is everyone free at this time to have a Shabbat, to have a time of rest, of not being enslaved and oppressed, so they have the freedom to explore and fulfill their potentials. Then we head into silent prayer, and now we're in Act 2. And basically, we're fulfilling Act 1. Act 2 is, so what do I do with this beautiful gratitude, this knowledge, and with my freedom? How do I know how to take it forward in the world? So we start on in the silent prayer. We have a blessing over, well, a good place to look is my ancestors, because I'm growing into them. How did they do it? Our second blessing says that we need to bring out of what looks dormant and dead potential. From that potential, bring life, actualized potential in ourselves and in our society and all around us. And then additional prayers, celebrating and trying to lead us ready for the next act, which will be the Torah service. So we'll be there soon. And at that point, we recreate Mount Sinai here on the Bima. Adira will be our Moses. And we will take the Torah out, and she will bring Torah to us both physically, and also Torah means instruction. She will be our teacher. She will instruct us and enlighten us with the shining rays of the light that comes forward from Torah to help us understand how we can use our freedom to find purpose in this world and proceed forward, not just in the coming weeks and years, but even in the coming days as we approach Rosh Hashanah. We continue with Ron coming back to, we are at the Song of the Sea, proceeding to our standing silent meditations and prayers. When I say later, we're on this page and do either Hebrew and English, I sometimes forget to tell you, you are perfectly empowered just to close your eyes and have your own creative reflections, meditations, and prayers.
Tilot le'el el baruch hu umevarach. Moshe b'nei Yisrael echanu shira b'simcha rabba v'amru chulam. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh. No rati loto sefelem. Shira chadasha shibchu geulim l'shimcha safat hayam. Yachad kulam hodu v'imlichu v'amru Adonai imo leolam va'ed. Tzur Yisrael kuma be'ezrat Yisrael uvdechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch Ata Adonai.
115b and forward, Hebrew English for your own personal prayers and thoughts. For those who are still in their silent prayers, please continue as the rest of us remain standing and turn back to 115B for the public proclamation.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chazdei Avot U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'neihem Lema'an Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Vokedu Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Voket Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Meitim Atah Rav Le'Hoshia Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayim Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim Somei Noflim V'Rofei Cholim Matir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Ba'al Gefurot Umidom Melach Melech Meimit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua B'ne'eman atah lehachayot meitim. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hameitim.
116.
Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam keshem shemakdishim oto bishmei maram kahakatu v'al yad neviyecha v'kahara zeh el zeh V'yamar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, V'lo chol haaretz kevodo. Az bekol ra'ash gadol, adir v'chazak mashmim ko, mitnasim lumat serafim, lumatam baruch yomeru, v'roch v'vod Adonai mimakomo. V'imkom v'chamalkeinu tofia, v'timloch aleinu ki mechakim anachnu lach, v'atai timloch b'tzion, v'karov b'yameinu li'olam v'ed tishkon, titkadal v'titkadash, b'toch Yerushalayim yircha, l'dor v'ador l'netzach netzachim, v'yeineinu tirena malchutecha. Kadavar amor b'shirei uzecha yedei David Mashiach tzidkacha lo Adonai le'olam hayetzion ledor vador hallelujah ledor vador nagid godlecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yemushli olam va'ed Ki el melech gadol v'kadosh ata baruch ata Adonai ha'el ha'kad.
We are seated as Ron continues the chant on 117.
Yismach Moshe b'matnat chelko ki eved neman karata lo klil tiferet b'rasha natata v'amdo lefanecha ahar Sinai u'shnei luchot avadim horit biyado V'chatu bahem shmirat Shabbat v'chein chatu v'toratecha. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. וביום השביעי Shalvat vayi nafash. Velo netato Adonai Eloheinu l'goyei avratzo. Velo hinchalto malkeinu le'avdei v'silim. V'gam b'menuchato lo yishkenu arelim. Ki l'Israel amachal natata bi'ava. L'zer Yaakov asher bam b'acharta. Am kadashei shavihi kulam yispeu. V'taneguhu mituvecha. V'hashvi'i rahatzita bo v'kidashto chemdat yamim oto karata zecher l'maseh v'reshi Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu retzei b'menuchatenu kadshenu b'mitzvotecha v'tein chalkenu b'toratecha sabenu mituvecha Kenu bishuatecha v'taher libeinu le'avdecha be'emet v'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu v'ahava uvratzon Shabbat kodshecha v'anuchu Yisrael v'kadshe Shemecha Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat V'tzei Adonai Eloheinu b'amcha Yisrael utfilatam V'ashev et avodah lidbir veitecha utfilatam be'avat gaber b'ratzon utehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha v'techazena einenu b'shuvcha l'tzion b'rachamim Baruch Ata Adonai Hamachazir Shchinato Letzion Mori Manachnu La. Hatov kilo choloracham mecha Ramrachim kilo tamu chasadecha meolam kevinu la. Ve'al kulam yitbarach v'trumam shimcha makenu tamid liolam va'ed. V'chol hachayim yoducha selah. V'alalu et shimcha b'yamed. Ha'el Yeshuatenu v'ezratenu selah baruch. Ata Adonai atov shimcha ulachano el hodod. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu barchenu b'abracham shuleshet b'Torah haktuva al yedei Moshe avdecha hamurat mipi Aharon uvanav kohanim am kedoshecha ka'amor yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha v'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael hamecha. Barchenu avinu kulanu keyechad v'yor panecha. Ki v'yor panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu. Torah chayim v'ahavat chesed u'tzedakah u'veracha v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom v'tov b'necha levarech et tamcha Yisrael v'chol ein uv'chol shah b'shlomecha Baruch Ata Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael v'shalom.
We just sang the first paragraph on page 120. I'm going to ask Chloe and Sebastian to read it to us in English.
Grant universal peace with happiness and blessing, grace, love, and mercy for us and for all the people Israel. Bless us, our Creator, one and all, with your life, for you have given us by that light the guide to a life of caring, filled with generosity and contentment, kindness and well-being and peace. May it please you to bless your people Israel in every season, at all time with your gift of peace. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses his people Israel with peace.
And let us say, Amen. 138.
Yit Gadavi, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, Galamat, Divrach, Iritevi, Amlich Malchute, Bechaychon, Uviomechon, Vechay, Dechol, Beit Yisrael, Bagalat, Visman Karivi, Meru, Amen. Yeheshmei Rabbah Mevorach, Leolam Uliol Meomaya, Vit Barach, Vishtabach, Vit Paar, Vit Romam, Vit Nase, Vit Hadar, Vit Alev, Vit Halal, Shmei de Kudasha, Berichu, Le'ela, Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Tushbechata V'Nechamata, Dami Ram Bialama V'imeru, Kapel Tzloton Uvaoton Decho Yisrael, Kadam Avuhon, Divish Maya V'imeru, Yehesh Lama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chayim Aleinu V'Yalko Yisrael V'imeru. Oh, say shalom b'ramav, huya say shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen.
We turn back in the prayer book to page 72 for the psalm for the day.
Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh. Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. Tov lo dot Adonai l'zamar l'shivka yom. Tzadikata hamar yifra ke'eret balvanon yizker tulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu odenu b'seiva Deshenim berananim yeyu magid ki yashar Adonai turi velo avlatavo.
Page 82 for Mourner's Kaddish. For those who are reciting the Kaddish today, please rise and recite with me. Yitgadal, Yikadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'yalma Divrach Kirute, V'yamlich Malchute, V'chayechon, Uvyomechon, Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Uvizman Kari V'imru, Yehe Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Le'olam Ulamei Amaya, Yibarach V'yishtabach, V'yipa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei de kudesha, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'ama v'imru, yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. We may be seated. May their memories continue to bring blessings to this world, as I know they do. As we prepare, we're on 139 in just a moment for the Torah service. You might notice some of masks going on and coming off on the bima. Our basic attempt, our standard is that only one person would have their mask off at any one time, and always when that happens from the bima. And so I'm going to ask everyone to do their best. Anyone who wants to do anything or daven or give a sermon or what I'm doing now with their mask on, absolutely. We want you to be comfortable. You are never asked to take your mask off, but for those who prefer to daven or chant, or I'm alone on the bima right now, I feel more comfortable, I'll take off my mask just for that one purpose. It does seem inconvenient to have these extra restrictions, but I also just feel such tremendous gratitude that this day is happening. I mean, it was supposed to happen a year ago. We just read in the Shabbat Psalm that our young people, when they're planted in the courts of our God, they grow up strong and tall It means spiritually. In Adira's place, it's also physical, as they grow up like beautiful trees, beautiful, strong inside and out with roots that go deep, and an amazing future that we get to celebrate with glimpses at this time. I'm grateful that we can even be together, and I'm grateful that we have this moment. I was telling Adira before we began services that the Shechianu has special meaning for me. When you say, thank God who gives me life, who allowed me to stay alive, and who delivers us to this moment, I feel like it really is a sense of being delivered. We are delivered to a moment. I mean, just hearing, I'm so used to hearing the sound of my own voice when I'm trying to do harmonies with the person leading the service, with Rebecca or Ron. And when I hear that there are other voices with mine, it's pretty awesome. Maybe something I take for granted too much. So I'm so grateful for this day to welcome Adira, her amazing family, and her amazing friends and congregants and members who have been davening on Shabbat, and welcoming everybody on the Zoomagog as well. It's incredible. I get to see you more than others because I peek in on the Zoomagog as we go along. And we have a whole group that's celebrating Adira and celebrating Shabbat, and who've come to mutually support each other in a way that they feel most centered and safe in their davening, which I fully understand. And that also includes my wife and children. So Shabbat Shalom. As we prepare for the Torah service right now, it's time for Adira to get her talit, which symbolizes the fact that our goal with all of the teachings that come from parents and grandparents, teachings that come from older siblings, often those are kept from parents, but they often contain extremely important wisdom, that all these teachings sort of come in, they kind of grow on you, like the tzitzit, the fringes on the talit, so that those voices are in you and you teach them to yourself in the future, that you are an adult who self-regulates, who is able to bring that advice to blossom at the time it needs to. So it's my honor at this time, as I put my mask back on, it's my honor to call up grandparents, Janet, Mervyn, and Victor, to present the talit. And Adira. I invite Victor to say something this time.
Adira, I'm sure you'll do marvelously. I'm sure we'll all be very proud of you. Everyone who's seen you grow in your family, people outside your family. I've long noticed your maturity and your understanding, your precocious understanding, not only of academics, but people and personal relationships. So you've made us very proud. And at this moment, I'm going to say the traditional prayer that parents and grandparents deliver to their grandchildren, to their children. God and my nation, Rafa. Yara and my plan left of me from that up. Esau and my plan left of me, Shalom, Shalom. May God bless you and protect you. May God bless you. Be gracious to you. May God bless you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen.
I'm sorry. May you grow up like our matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Amen.
Amen. You hold up the talit, and Adira will do the blessing. Or Adira will.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher k'dishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chitatek b'tzitzit.
Amen. We ask Janet to remain on the bima and take her place by the ark. We ask grandfathers to return to their makoms. And our Moses for the day begins the chant of the Torah service on page 139.
Ein kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kama'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai oseh lo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom. Amen.
Page 140.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael,
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Adonai Hamamlacha Kamid Naaseh Romemu Adonai Eloheinu.
Don't look really that close for the picture. This one is
You're so sweet. I appreciate you too. It's a very emotional time of year for me, so you have to be proud.
well, it's making me cry too, so maybe I don't know what it is. It's everything. Are you gonna talk?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to the Mishnah first because that way we'll be empty behind. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Elohim. Hine matovu manahim shevetachim gam yachad. Hine matovu manahim shevetachim gam yachad. Hine matov, hine matov. Yada hine matov, hine matov. Yada We may be seated. Okay. You can get yourself prepared that we are beginning Parshat Nitzavim, and in the red Eitz Chaim Chumash, we will be in a moment on page 1165. At this time, while the bima is empty, I'm going to do, I guess I count two. So I'll say it's almost empty. There's still one person on it. I do value myself. Let's do the blessing for those in need of healing so that we have some space and some time to focus. The list is fairly long. There are a lot of people that need our prayers and feel very isolated at this time. And I also invite everyone to include a name. I kind of use my hand like this. You'll see how it goes. And please feel free to include names. They can be in Hebrew or in English. They can be Jewish. They can be not Jewish. They could be someone else. They could be yourself. And then there's someone we're going to pray for extra hard at the end of this prayer. And I'm going to tell you what that is about at the end of the blessing. Misha berach avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah v'Yivarech v'Yirapeh et HaCholim Yerushlam ben Avraham Yitzchak Ma'im Sheva Chai Elisheva Ophira Gudis Warren Greenberg David ben Ava Baruch Valoria Tzvia Bar Ruvenu Devora Stacey Simpson Duke Shlomi Yonah bat Avram Sam Silver Gedolnia bat Shangel Sprinza Zorchana bat Shalom Mikael v'Chaya Fega Miriam Ruth bat Avram v'Sarah Rivka Le bat Avram Meir Chaya Fega bat Malka Daniel ben Rachel v'Baruch Eileen Burke Yudah Haram ben Eliezer v'Tzipor Harav Shaga Yosef ben Rezo Dorbora Aviva bat Yitzchak v'Esther Avraham ben David Ashley Montgomery Benny Borges Robin Greenspan Dan Yitzchak ben Reuben Avram Beleah Arizelek ben Devora Yonah Moshe ben Shoshana Belib Yonatan ben Raphael Belad Hanahinda ben Moshe Brennan Masha Brucha Dvorah ben Yehudit Shoshana Batova Shlomo Hill ben Herschel v'Shangela Alana Shahatz Richard Levy, Rachel Baba Vachava, Miriam Ben Zeva Esther, Aharon Ben Elisheva Mikael, Olivia Ruta, Sanford Flair, Reuben Ben Shmuel Simcha, William Bishop, Arav Shakta Ben Ganessa, Judith Elkin, Benjamin Yisrael Ben Chanita, Dave Dubinsky, Benjamin Chaim Ben Arya, Caleb Ad Edna, Attica Shunover, Jen Cox, Shmuel Ben Yoel, Max Aaron, Abriel Shel Shlomihi, Azriel Shel Shlomihi, Drew McPherson, Yosef ben Avram v'Sarah, Yonah Tova bat Rivka Machel, Shlomi bat Sharon, Sharon bat Leah, Shoshana bat Sarah, Maggie Glucklick, Esther Malka bat Miriam, Cornelius Barber, Yafalana ben bat Tzipora, Esther Baruch Simcha, Tzvia Sarah bat Aaron ben Nechama, Eliezer Moshe ben Meir, Sam Warner, Natalia ben Moshe Veleas, Arivka Bakuna, Paul Pekidis, Kelly Popik, Shalom Zev ben Moshe, Kelly Avraham Mikael ben Chaya Leah v'Yitzchak Tzvihi, Florence Eisner Model, Naomi Chaya bat Shlomit, Remy Hitchcock, Yitzchak ben Yosef v'Paso, Einer ben Yaakov v'Leah, Rachel bat Avraham v'Leah, Kimberly Fuller, Tito Flores, David ben Avracha, Esther Gidol bat Chaya Rivka. Those suffering from the coronavirus, we ask.
Miriam Esther Arthur C.
Stuart Beatty.
V'kol ha'chalim b'kidla kedosha ha'kadosh baruch hu yimalei rachamim aleihem v'chazikam rapatam v'yishlach lahem mehera refuah shlema min hashamayim refuat ha'nefesh refuat ha'guf b'tok shakalei Yisrael shabati milizok v'frakafa lavo hashta bi'agalavis man kariv v'nomahar amen. Back, I believe it's on page 14 in Yedid Nefesh, the prayer we do last night. The second paragraph is a special mystical prayer of healing. Many of you know it by heart, but if you're interested, it is on page 14 as the second verse. And I'd like to sing it this time following before a moment of silence. So we have a member. Many of you know, they're members. We have many of you know Sue Cowan. Today, we probably won't be having, I suspect, the text in front of us in the Zumagog, because she handles the texts for us in Sefaria. She's been leading Torah study on Saturdays. She's a precious member of the synagogue, even though she joined all the way from Virginia. She's become like a pillar of the congregation at a distance. Our roots spread far. And her non-binary child, not so much a child anymore, Azriel Shel Shlomit, had severe seizures the night before last. And Sue has been by her side and praying for waking up and responsiveness. And we prayed last night, and it was during that hour that responsiveness started to happen. And they are both joining us right now on Zoom from the hospital room as the team of doctors is facilitating the removal little by little of assistances. And we want to take a moment of silence to let Sue and Andy and Azriel know how much you may not know all of us, but now we know you. And we are praying for a full and speedy recovery because we know that God's spirit, which is the spirit of healing, is within all of our bodies and it's within all of our spirits. So we are fully embracing hope. A moment of silence, and then let's sing that second paragraph to add a little mystical energy to the mystical name of Azriel. Ana elna rifana la beharot la no siva as tilchaze v'tidrape v'hayetala shivchat olam. May you return, may everyone we're praying for return to full health speedily and completely. Amen. We invite Lonnie up to take her place on the bima as we start our, also channeling the energy of Torah. We call up Aubrey Mays. Avraham ben Gershon HaKohen v'Kaila and Mervyn Mays. Meir ben Gershom HaKohen v'Kaila. Baruch Natan Torah l'Amo Yisrael b'Kedushato v'yatem habekim Adonai Elohechem chayim kulechem hayom.
If you're following in the Ready Experience Chumash, it's on page 1165.
Baruch hu et Adonai haMavorach, Baruch Adonai haMavorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch Adonai haMavorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Amen. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem, roshechem shiftechem, ziknechem v'shotrechem, kol ish Yisrael. Tapchem neshechem begercha asher bekerev machanecha, mechotei vetzecha ad shoev memecha. Le'avarcha bivrit Adonai Elohecha uvalato asher Adonai Elohecha koreti macha hayom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And because of our abundance of caution at this time, we're going to ask you to return to your place. But we know that you have no desire to rush away from the Torah.
Hence they're going the long way around.
And hence they properly go the long way around, which is the proper tradition. We call up Todd Endelman as our Levi. Ya'amod, Todros ben Hanoch HaLevi. HaLevi. I always do that. Double Levi. Continue with verse 12. Of Deuteronomy chapter 29.
Baruch Adonai Barak.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Leman hakim otcha hayom le'am ve'hu yiyelecha le'Elohim ka'asher diber lach וכאשר נשבע לאבותיך לאברהם ליצחק וליעקב ולא איתכם לבדכם אנוכי קוראת את הברית הזאת ואת העלה הזאת כי את אשר ישנו פה עמנו עומד היום לפני אדוני אלוהינו את אשר איננו פה עמנו היום.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Olam Asher natan lanu Torat Emet V'Kei Olam Natan B'Tefenu Baruch Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Shkoch. We continue with our third Aliyah. It's an honor to have all of you on the bima here. Victor Lieberman is summoned back to the bima. Ya'amod Avigdor ben Ephraim Bechana Ha'ashlishi.
Baruch Adonai Habarach.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. כי אתם ידעתם את אשר ישבנו בארץ מצרים ואת אשר עברנו בקרב הגויים אשר עברתם ותראו את שיקוציהם ואת גלוליהם את צבא אבן כסף וזהב אשר עמהם פן יש בכם איש או אישה או משפחה או שבט אשר לבבו פונה היום עם אדוני אלוהינו ללכת לעבוד את כל אלוהי הגויים
את אלוהי.
את כל אלוהי
את אלוהי.
את כל אלוהי את אלוהי הגויים ההם פן יש בכם שורש פורה ראש ולענה והיה בשמעו את דברי העלה הזאת ותתברך בלבבו לאמור שלום יהיה לי כי בשרירות ליבי אלך למען שפות ערבה את הצמאה ולא יבא אדוני סולח לו כי אז יעשה אף אדוני ישן אף אדוני וקנאתו באיש ההוא ורב צבו כל העלה כתובה בספר הזה ומחה אדוני את שמו מתחת השמיים והבדילו אדוני לרעה מכל שבטי ישראל ככל עלות הברית הכתובה בספר התורה הזה ואמר הדור האחרון בניכם אשר יקומו מאחריכם והנוכרי אשר יבוא מארץ רחוקה וראו את מכות הארץ ואת תאכלו אשר לא כילה אדוני בה גפרית ומלח שרפה כל ארצה לא תזרע ולא תצמיח ולא יעלה בה כל עשב כמפחת סתום ועמורד וצבועים אשר הפך אדוני באפו וחמתו ואמרו כל הגויים Adonai kach al haaretz hazot mechari ha'af hagadol hazeh ve'amru al asher azvu et brit Adonai Elohei avotam asher karati mahem behotziyot imam behotzio otam me'eretz Mitzrayim vayelchu vayavdu Elohim achirim vayishtachavu lahem Elohim asher lo yada'um velo chalak lahem vayicharaf Adonai ba'aretz ahi lahavi aleha et kol haklala ktuva b'sefer hazeh vayitshem Adonai me'al admatam ba'afu v'chema u'v'ketzaf gadol vayashlichem el eretz acheret kayom hazeh hanistarot l'Adonai Eloheinu v'haniglot lanu levanenu ad olam lasot et kol divrei haTorah hazot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natav v'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yishar koach and Mazal Tov. Mazal Tov to those I did not say. Elijah takes his place from Lonnie, and we call up our fourth aliyah, Ya'amod Binyamin ben Ephraim ve'Esther ha'ari'i. We're continuing with chapter 30 of Deuteronomy.
Baruch Adonai habarach.
Baruch Adonai habarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai habarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'haya ki yava'u alecha kol hadavarim ha'ela habracha v'haklala asher natati lefanecha v'hishevota elavavecha v'chol hagoyim asher hadichacha Adonai Elohecha shama v'shavta Adonai Elohecha v'shamata v'kolo kecho asher anochi mitzavcha hayam ata uvanecha b'chol vavacha v'chol nafshecha v'shav Adonai Elohecha et shvuatecha v'richamecha v'shav v'kavutzacha mikol ha'amim asher hafitzacha Adonai Elohecha shama im Adonai Im yihiyeh nidachecha b'ksei hashamayim misham yikavitzacha Adonai Elohecha umisham yikachecha v'heviacha Adonai Elohecha el haaretz asher yishu avotecha v'yirishta v'hitivacha v'hirbecha me'avotecha Umal Adonai Elohecha et levavecha ve'et levav zarecha lehava et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha leman chayecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natav b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yishkoch. Beautiful read by Elijah, and it's an honor to have Karen take his place, which verse 7. And we call up Martha and Eric. Ya'amdu Malka bat Label Bethegi Yitzchak ben David Bethegi. You related or I'm distracted? Oh, no, okay. Ha Chamishihi.
Page 1170, verse 7.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'natan Adonai Elohecha
את כל העלות האלה על אויביך ועל שונאיך אשר רדפוך, ואתה תשוב ושמעת בקול אדוני, וכסית את כל מצוותיו אשר אנוכי מצווך היום, והותירך אדוני אלוהיך בכל מעשה ידיך, ובפרי בטנך, ובפרי בהמתך, ובפרי אדמתך לטובה, כי ישוב אדוני לסוס עליך לטוב, כאשר שש על אבותיך, כי תשמע בקול אדוני אלוהיך, לשמור במצוותיו וחוקותיו הכתובה בספר התורה הזה, כי תשמע, כי תשוב אל אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבביך ובכל נפשך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tolcheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Can you just stay here for one moment? So much of what we celebrate, both the high notes and the low notes over the last year and a half, we have to do so privately. So in this case, I can't resist an opportunity to ask everyone to sing Siman Tov for you on behalf of today, your anniversary. Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov. Yehei Lanu, Yehei Lanu. It's just 3 days ago. It's this Sunday.
No, last Sunday.
We'll sing it again. And for those who saw the email that went out this week, and also your daughter Julia's wedding this past Sunday, it feels so good that we celebrated today. So thank God. May God bless you with a long and happy life, and that of your entire extended family.
Thank you.
Certainly. Yeshokol Chachem. Adira comes to succeed her siblings and find her spot in the scroll, chapter 30, verse 11. And I'm honored to call up Jeffrey and Emily Pitt at this time. Ya'amdu Avshalom Shmuel ben Murray ve'ina ve'Emilia Chana bat Avigdor ve'Sharon ha'ashishi. Nadira will show you where to touch your tzitzit and give it a kiss. Take your.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ki hamitzvah hazot asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom, lo nifleti mimecha, velo rechoka hi, lo bashamayim hi, lemor. Mia alelanu hashamayma, veyikachecha lanu, veyashmienu ota v'naasena, velo me'ever layam hi, lemor. Mia avar lanu el ever hayam, v'yikachecha lanu, v'yashmienu ota v'naasena, ki karov elecha hadavar me'od, b'ficha u'belvavecha la'asoto. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yishar Kochachem and Mazal Tov. We continue with our seventh Aliyah. My honor to call up Jessica and Brad at this time. Ya'amdu Yiska bat Avigdor v'Sharon, Binyamin ben Meir HaKohen v'Yael HaShvi'i.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen.
Amen. Re'eh natati lefanecha chayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamovet ve'et hara asher anochi mitzavecha hayom la'ahava et Adonai Elohecha la'lechet b'drechav ve'lishmor mitzvotav v'chukotav u'mishpatav v'chayita v'ravita Uberachecha Adonai Elohecha ba'aretz asher bata v'shama l'rishta ve'im yifne levavecha ve'lo tishma v'nidachta ve'hishtachavita l'Elohim acherim va'avadetam Yigadati lachem hayom ki avot tovedun lo ta'arichun yamim al ha'adama asher ata over et hayarden lavo shama l'rishta ha'idoti vachem hayom et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz chachayim ve'hamavet natati lefanecha habracha ve'chaklala ובחרת בחיים למען תחיה אתה וזרעך לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך לשמוע בקולו ולדבקו כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך לשבת על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך לאברהם ליצחק וליעקב לתת להם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Let's sing the Shechianu together. This is a huge moment, not just for Adira, but for her family. She's the youngest of her siblings and is now officially entered adulthood. And I mean, I know she entered a year ago, but now we can celebrate it. So let's celebrate with Shechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'hikianu l'zman hazeh. We ask you to remain here. We stay close as we continue with the Chatzi Kaddish. Yikada v'yikada shemei rabba v'yamadi rak rute v'yamlech malchute b'chayechon u'yom echon u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'ala v'zman kariv v'yimeru amen yehesh me'rak ha'mevarach li'alam la'me'almayan Yiparach v'ishtabach v'yipar v'trama v'naseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha le'ela min kol berchata v'shihirata tushbechata v'nehemata ta'amira mi'alma v'imeru ta'amod 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 adira chana bat Benyamin HaKohen v'yiska habat mitzvah
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Verse 15. 18.
Where is it? I think it's up here. Higadati lachem hayom ki avot tovedun lo ta'arichun yamim al ha'adama asher ata over et hayarden lavo shama l'rishta ha'idoti vachem hayom et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz chachayim ve'hamavet natati lefanecha chabracha ve'chaklala Ubacharta b'chayin leman tichye ata v'zarecha lahava et Adonai Elohecha lishmoa bikolo uledav kavo kichu chayecha ve'orech yamecha leshevet al ha'adama asher nishba Adonai la'avotecha la'Avraham le'Yitzchak u'Yaakov laten lahem. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Bisha berach avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech et Adira Chana bat Binyamin HaKohen v'Yiska shehigia l'mitzvot v'yata likvod ha'makom v'likvod ha'Torah v'likvod ha'Shabbat HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmereha v'yichayeha v'yichonen et liba liot shlema im Adonai Eloheha la'god b'torato la'lechet b'drachav l'shmor mitzvotav yishlach bracha v'atzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yadeha Yiratzon sheyizku horeha legadla leTorah ulechupa L'masim tovim v'timsachem v'sechel ben Elohim v'adam v'nomar Amen. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless you, Adira Mays, who has been called to the Torah upon reaching the age of responsibility, of mitzvot. She's come with reverence for God, for the Torah, and for Shabbat. May the Holy One protect and sustain her, helping her to be wholehearted in her faithfulness, to study Torah and fulfill mitzvot, and to walk in God's ways. May she be reared to full maturity, guiding her to a love of Torah and continual education, to the chuppah, to a life of loving partnership, of being loved and loving, to a life of good deeds. May she find favor before God and before the entire community. And let us say, Amen. Amen. We haven't heard the last from you. We look forward to more teachings from our Moshe for the day, but it is time to ask Brad to lift a Torah that's rolled all the way to the end. I've asked him not to show us columns because you would have to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. And I ask you all to rise for the lifting of the scroll as I also call up Julius as our Torah dresser. Yamod Mavia, Yamod, Adonai, V'zot HaTorah, Asher Sa Moshe, Lifnei B'nei Yisrael, Al Pi Adonai, B'yad Moshe. Ayim hi l'machazikim ba v'tom lehem be'usha. It's ayim hi l'machazikim ba v'tom lehem be'usha. Shalom Yadadai Darkeinu Am B'chol Netivotecha Shalom Yadadai In a moment, the Torah will find its place. So will our tukuses, just in a moment. I can let you know as you are now seated. And everyone on Zoom, I saw who stood and who sat, so I'm going to follow up on all of that. We allow people to just stand internally. I want to let you know that because of the delay in the year, we're going to be, Adira, not we, it's Adira's responsibility. She'll be chanting the Haftarah, the prophetic selection for today. It can be found on page 1161 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. It is the Haftarah for Kitavo. Halachically, we must read the Torah section that was assigned for the day. And so Adira had to switch Torah sections. But the Haftarah, as you can probably tell, because so often the Sephardim and the Ashkenazim go separate, they choose different things. The Haftarah, the prophetic selections are by custom. I mean, very traditional custom, but one is allowed to diverge and pick a different prophetic selection for the day. We know sometimes rabbis from the Talmud did so. So we followed that today and we're looking forward. And I'm especially grateful because if you look back at the words of the anonymous prophet whose works are collected in the latter part of the book of Isaiah, particularly chapter 60, it's absolutely a gorgeous poetry to it. It is full of the imagery of God's light, that God expresses God's self and flows through the universe in a form of energy. The first line finds its way into the mystical poem L'Chadodi on Friday night, that the energy of God flows and flows. I just want to call attention to one of my favorite poetic metaphors. I hope you can sit in the poetry of it, which is actually in verse 6 on page 1161. It's beautiful in the Hebrew, translates somewhat into the English as well. Remember years ago, I was reading the poetry of Yves Bonnefoy, and you read a line and you can never unremember it. He says, an inner sea lighted by turning eagles. Now that is an image. I hold you close where images do not hold. Could never forget that line when I read it, and neither could I forget the beginning of verse 6. I wish I could do it better, more poetically. Dust clouds of camels shall cover you. In the Hebrew, shifat gemalim, this overflow, like you're looking at the desert, and it's a flow of camels are covering you, dromedaries of Midian and Ephah, coming from Sheba, bearing gold and frankincense. The flocks of Kedar shall be assembled for you. The rams of Neviat shall serve your needs. And there's no one presenting them. It's like the rams with the ram's horns are showing up for you by themselves. And they will be welcome at my altar. And behold, the coastlands await me with ships of Tarshish in the lead to bring your children from afar. Of course, we're about to read Jonah and Yom Kippur, where Jonah has to go forward from Tarshish, and now returning to the Holy Land with only good tidings. We hope you enjoy the poetry, and we're excited for Adira's voice.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ritzah b'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet b'tzedek. Kumi ori kiva orech uchvod Adonai aleich zarach. Ki hinei hahoshech yaseh eretz ve'arafel le'umim v'alayich yizrach Adonai uchvodo aleich yira'eh v'chachu goyim le'orech umlachim le'noga zarchech. Say saviv einayich or'i kulam nikbetu ba'ulach v'anayich merahok yavo'u uvnotayich al tzad te'amana. אז תראי ונחת ופחד ורחב לבבך, כי יהפך עלייך המון ים, אל גויים יבואו לך. שפעת גמלים תכסך, בכרי מדיין ואפה כולם משווה יבואו, זהב ובונה יישאו, ותהילות אדוני יבשרו. כל צאן קדר יקבצו לך, אלי נוויות ישרתונך. יעלו על רצון מזבחי ובית תפארתי אפאר. מאלה כאב תעופנה וחיונים אל ארובותיהם. כי לי איים יקבו בניות תרשיש בראשונה, להביא בנייך מרחוק כספם וזהבם איתם, לשם אדוני אלוהיך ולקדוש ישראל כפארך. ובנו בני נכר חומותייך ומלכיהם ישרתונך, כי בקצפי הכיתיך וברצוני ריחנתיך. וביטו שערייך תמיד יומם ולילה לא יסגרו, להביא אלייך אל גויים ומלכיהם נהוגים. כי הגוי והממלכה אשר לא יעבדוך יאבדו, והגויים הרוב יחרבו. כבוד הלבנון אלייך יבוא בראש, תתהר ותאשור יחדיו, לפאר מקום מקדשי ומקום רגלי אכבד. ברכו אלייך שכוח בני מענייך, והשתחוו על כפות רגלייך כל מנעצייך, וקראו לך עיר אדוני ציון קדוש ישראל. תחת היותך עזובה ושנואה ואין עובר, ושמתיך לגאון עולם משוש דור ודור. ביענקת חלב גויים ושוד מלכים תינקי, וידעת כי אני אדוני מושיעך וגואלך אביר יעקב. תחת הנחושת אביסחב, ותחת הברזל אבי כסף, ותחת העצים נחושת, ותחת האבנים ברזל. ושמתיך פקודתך שלום, ונוגסייך צדקה. לא ישמע עוד המס בארזך, שוד ושבר בגבולייך, וקראת ישועה חומותייך, ושערייך תהילה. לא יהיה לך עוד השמש לאור יומם, ולנוגה הירח לא יאיר לך, וחיה לך אדוני לאור עולם, ואלוהיך לתפארתך. לא יבוא עוד שמשך וירכך לא יאסף, כי אדוני יהיה לך לאור עולם, ושלמו ימי אבלך. בימך כולם צדיקים לעולם, ירשו ארץ. נצר מטעי מעשה ידי להתפאר, הקטון יהיה לאלף והצעיר לגוי עצום. אני אדוני בעיתה אחישנה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם צור כל העולמים צדיק בכל הדורות האל הנאמן האומר ועושה המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ונאמנים דבריך בדבר אחד מדבריך אחור לא יעשו ריקם כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי היא בית חיינו ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו ברוך אתה אדוני משמח ציון בבניך. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באליהו הנביא עבדך ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו על כיסאו לא ישב זר ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותה יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Shabbat Shalom. Today's parsha comes from the book of Deuteronomy. As the people are about to cross into the promised land, Moshe will not be joining them. In his last speech, he talks about covenant, how the Torah is accessible to all, and how we must do our best to understand Torah without expecting God or experts to simply tell us what it says. At the beginning of the parsha, God says that the Torah is addressed to everyone, from the elderly to children, to public officials, to non-Jews, and to the poor. We're all in this together. Everyone matters, not just the leaders and their actions. This is a major theme of the parsha. It's important that the Torah is accessible to everyone because everyone is needed to change the world. The Torah is telling everyone, not just some people like the Levites, to be a holy person. So what's the difference between being a good person and being a holy person? In the Torah, holiness is connected to covenant, which is really different from a contract. A contract is only about behavior you do during the term of the contract, but a covenant consists of obligations you take on for your entire life and also brings obligations to future generations. One of the main points of the entire Torah is that the big changes this world needs cannot be accomplished by just some people doing good things now. Instead, they can only be accomplished by groups of people whose actions will take many, many generations to be realized. Covenant is like a big relay race. You take the baton from the last generation who ran a leg of the race. You then run for your lifetime, then you pass the baton on to the next generation. This is the only way to get rid of racial injustice. This is the only way to really change the change of the role of women and their rights in this world. This is the only way to address climate change. We have to look at how far we've come, but also how far we have yet to go. It's important to look at our progress because it gives us hope that things can change, as we've seen them change in the past. We must strive for future changes so that our world can be closer to how we want it to look. One area that society has made advances in, but still has progress to make, is women's sports. Women are now able to play professionally in virtually every sport, but there is still a long way to go. For example, the NBA, National Basketball Association, and the WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association, are supposed to be two versions of the same thing. Then why does the Women's League have the word women's in the name, but the men's not have the word men's? Another even more outrageous example I can think of is the US national soccer teams. In the recent past, players on the men's team were paid more money for a loss than the women's players made for a win. 20 years ago, this difference in salaries would have been even more drastic, but obviously there is still plenty of room for improvements to be made. Maybe this is the reason there are special mysterious diamonds above the words "for us and for our children" in my Torah portion. I think these diamonds are here as a reminder that with any actions we undertake, we have to consider their impact on future generations. I now would like to thank those who have done so much to make a good life for me. The first generation here with me today includes my grandparents, Granny, Zadie, and Grandpa. Unfortunately, my grandma passed away in 2013, but we feel her influence every day. All my grandparents were actively involved in opposing social and racial injustices in their own communities. That baton has been passed on to my parents, me, and my siblings. Next, I want to thank my aunts and uncles, Aunt Jackie and Uncle Juan, and my Aunt Emmy and Uncle Jeff for their love and support. To my 6 wonderful cousins, I am so grateful for your fun company and love. I also want to thank my many other family members for making the trip to Michigan during the pandemic. And to my friends and loved ones who are here today, thank you for taking this time to be a part of this. And to everyone who wanted to be here today, but couldn't because of COVID, I hope to see you soon. Thank you, Rav Nadav, for meeting with me and helping me better understand my Parsha and for helping me to be prepared for today. And Lonnie, my amazing tutor, thank you for all you've done, for teaching and preparing me at your house, over FaceTime, and at the park with our mosquito companions. I couldn't have done this without your kind and generous support. And thank you for coming out of retirement to tutor the last of the Maze kids. And thank you, Ron, for making me feel comfortable on the bima. To my biggest brother, Sharmaki, thank you for coming all the way from Djibouti to be here today. Next, I want to thank Karen, my amazing sister, for helping me prepare for this big day and for being the loving and fun sister you almost always are. I love you so much. And Elijah, I'd like to thank you for being so enthusiastic about my bat mitzvah preparation that you would snatch the Haftarah book out of my hands and start reciting it yourself. You are so warm and positive towards me, and I love you. Finally, I want to thank my mom and dad for helping me stay on top of studying for today, for planning this wonderful weekend, and for being so patient, reassuring, and caring. Shabbat Shalom.
It's my honor to invite your mom and dad to join you on the Zoom at this time. 12-point font on something.
Should I take my pen?
You're welcome to. And if you can, just because we want to be so fair to the people who are streaming, if you could come a little closer to the microphone. I'll tell you what, Adira, why don't you come around? Why don't you switch with your mom? And that way your mom can use the microphone, but she can still see you.
Adira, when you were born, you burst into the world with a brightness and intensity that have never left you. Your eyes have always shined with a light that reveals your energy and capability. We named you Adira after my grandmother Annette, who was a powerful woman propelled by a clear inner voice. Your name translates as mighty and powerful and has always suited you. Dad and I have watched as you learn to harness your innate power to bring about what your heart and mind tell you is worthy. I look forward to seeing all that you will accomplish, driven by your understanding of what is right and who needs support. You have already learned to recognize what is broken in the world in big ways and small. As you go forward, you will also come to see how best to use your many talents, your power, and your loving nature to fix and to heal. Mazel tov, Dira. I love you.
May it please the court. Oh, wait, wrong speech, sorry. Well, Chief Justice. Adira, we are so proud of you today, which is nothing new, by the way. And to have practiced this twice, thanks to COVID, shows drive, determination, and extreme diligence, attributes which will serve you well into the future. Mazel tov. You've always been the baby of the family, but today you've shown us you've become young Jewish women. You've brought us and your loved ones much nachas. Smiles are everywhere, even under the mask. But now the tough part, walking the talk. You alluded to some important issues in your Devar Torah, racial and social injustice, women's rights, and climate change. In this room today, your friends and family joining you through the Zoomagog, and in those who passed before us today, there's much knowledge, experience, expertise, and passion for these important issues to you. There's much to learn from the experiences of past family generations, from your great-grandfather Harold, who was a famous civil rights lawyer in the 1950s and 1960s, to your grandparents, who are each intimately involved in social and racial injustice issues in the 1960s and 70s in South Africa and the United States, to your parents, who are immigration lawyers and civil rights lawyers. The knowledge is there, but the drive and the passion need to come from you. Today, you showed us that you have the passion, the fortitude, and the character to make a difference going forward. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Take chances, and always look to champion the causes of the less fortunate. Adira, your moral compass is strong. Trust it going forward. Now take the baton and get after it.
And I get to say, now take the Siddur and continue leading us in the service. We're on page 148 as we continue the Torah service with Yikum Porkan.
Yekum Porkan min Shemaya.
Yikum Porkan min Shemaya.
Ve'yishlach beracha ve'chatzlacha bechol ma'aseh yedehem im kol Yisrael achehem ve'nomar amen.
Page 151 for Ashrei.
Ashrei yoshvei veitecha od halelucha selah. Tehillah leDavid, Aramimcha Elochai HaMelech, Bavarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed. Gadol Adonai Umhulal Me'od, Beligdulato Ein Heker.
Dor l'dor yeshavach ma'asecha,
Hadar kevod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha, ve'ezuz noretecha yomeru, u'gvoratecha saprena. Zecher rab tuvcha yabi'u, v'tzidkatecha yiranenu, hanum v'rachum Adonai, erech apayim udal chased, tov Adonai lechol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yevarchucha. כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו, להודיע לבני האדם גבורותיו, וכבוד הדר מלכותו. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור, סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, זוקף לכל הכפופים. עיני כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן לכם את אכלם בעיתו, פותח את ידיך, ומשביח לכל הרצון. צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו, קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יקראו באמת, רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שיבתם ישמע ויושיעם, שומר אדוני את כל בניו. השניים ישמיד. תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, וברך כל בשר שם קדשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, hallelujah.
We invite Aunt Jackie Moreno to the bima to open our curtain as we rise. We're on page 153. And we ask our Torah carrier to come forward. Okay, yeah, we can face the ark if we help.
יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו.
הודו הארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן ויענו, תהילה לכל עשייה, ויהי ישראל עם גדול. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod hirim. Adonai al mayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach. Kol Adonai behadar. Kol Adonai shoveh harazim. Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon. Vayarkidem mo'egel Levanon besiryon kemo ben re'emim. Kol Adonai kotzev lavotesh. Kol Adonai yachil midbar. Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh. Kol Adonai yecholel. Vayechesof yarod uvehekalo kulo omer kavod. Adonai lamabuya Yeshem Adonai melech leolam. Adonai Yevah.
Page 154. remain standing as I invite Sharmaki up to the bima at the microphone to lead us in the prayer for our country on 148. Thank you so much.
A prayer for our country. Our God and God for our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they might administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst.
Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. And citizens of all races and creeds forge common bonds and true harmony, to banish hatred and bigotry, to safeguard the ideals of free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country.
May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift the sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say amen.
Amen. We remain standing. Thank you so much. As we continue with the prayer for the state of Israel, we invite Vic up to the beat. Oh, I'm sorry. And Beth will go first with the Hebrew. Thanks.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Sur Yisrael v'Goalo, Barek et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smichat Geulatenu. Hagen Aleha, ve'avrach chasdacha, ufros Aleha, sukat shlomecha. V'shlach orcha v'amitcha rasheha, sareha v'yotzeha. V'taknem be'etza tova milfanecha. Chazek et yidei megine eretz kodshenu. V'hanchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, v'ateret netzachon teatrem. V'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam b'yoshveha, v'nomar amen.
A prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu Shabashamayim, Rock and Redeemer of the people Israel. Bless the state of Israel with its promise of redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them, crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say amen.
Amen. As we return to our places, I invite up Sandra for the prayer for peace.
Prayer for peace. May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world. Nation will not threaten nation, mankind will not gain no. For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love. God, leaders of all nations, power of compassion. Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture. I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you. Let the land of vicious beasts shall not be ravished by war. Let love and justice flow like a mighty stream. Let peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea. And let us say, amen.
You may be seated. I'm in the process of taking my sermon and cutting it down to about 1 minute. I think you'll be hearing from me plenty in the coming days, I hope. But I want to share just, I want to witness to the Torah with one reflection that I've had, and I hope it speaks to others. One of the beautiful parts, one of the greatest contributions that academic scholarship in Jewish studies has made to our understanding of Judaism in the past, now over 100 years, but that past 100 years, has been to understand more deeply the true rabbinic view of God. Many of us inherited a view that either God was something so abstract that it was invented by 18th and 19th century moralists, or it was a highly anthropomorphic view of God, which represented fundamentalist religion in its original form. What scholarship has shown us so much is that our ideas of what the text, some of the texts that we read today actually mean is not the literalist meaning that came to us. It's not that those who lived in olden times were literalists, and we struggle with a new kind of smorphia, but rather that what scholarship has revealed is that so many of the rabbis believed in a non-anthropomorphic view of God. They believed in a God that is everywhere and at every moment. And we understand that God through the processes that unfold in front of us. They viewed it with these metaphors of light that Adira was chanting sometimes from the prayer book and sometimes from her Haftarah. This idea that everything only exists because of the way it is sustained by a divine energy. They often used water metaphors. They said it's like everything's made of a water, and what form it looks like depends on the frequency that the energy of that water takes, and we ourselves are a part of it. The rabbis were highly scientific. They felt that when we understood the processes of growing up, the processes of science, certainly the processes of mathematics, we are understanding God and gaining knowledge of God. And the idea that God just is a God on high on a throne, Brad, I loved. Like, can I use that on high holy days? I'll turn around and be like, sorry, Your Honor. That the true judge that is like a human judge, and we're trying to be obedient, just so much the way we understand things at Rosh Hashanah coming up. But rather, what it means that God is the true judge is that God set in motion decrees at the time of creation, revealed to us in so many ways through enlightenment over time and revelation, of the way the world works, of the way each thing in every moment unfolds, the processes that govern us. So knowledge of God is knowledge of the world, for God is everywhere. And knowledge of the processes in which things unfold are vital to God's knowledge. Therefore, as we approach Rosh Hashanah, we are not looking to be, we're not looking for obedience, to reaffirm our obedience to the one and true Your Honor, but rather to live according to the ways we understand the world to work, and that the moral law is also originally a part of the fabric of this universe. Many of us may not realize that the weeks that we have been counting, the 7 weeks of consolation that would lead from Tisha B'Av to Rosh Hashanah, that we are now at the end of, mirrors in Jewish tradition the 7 weeks of counting between Pesach and Shavuot. That 7 week of counting, according to these rabbis, according to the rabbis who believe we're trying to understand the way things move, the larger processes and small processes that we're involved in, how they unfold, is that we celebrate an unfolding of those processes by counting the 7 sefirot of God, the way the flow happens, the way energies happen. Between Pesach and Shavuot, we count 7 attributes of the flow, 7 processes that are taking place around us. But in that time, we count from top to bottom. We count from the highest form, the most abstract ways in which God flows in this world, in which the flows of history are riding on the waves. But between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah, we count the 7 sefirot upward from the human realm, from the most human to the divine. So we've been counting up from Shekhinah, Malchut, what it's like to live in the kingdom on earth, what it's like to live here. And we increasingly channel the attributes of abstraction in order to get to the final one, which will be Rosh Hashanah, which is the attribute of compassion, the attribute of being gracious to all who exist, attribute of love. But in order to get to that attribute of love, we go through the attribute of gevura. And if I could just say one thesis for today, my title for my idea today is In Defense of Gevura, in defense of the attribute, the way the world works in terms of consequences. Gevura means accountability, appropriate for a day of bat mitzvah. It means responsibility, but it means consequence and accountability. When people read the parts of the Torah that we read today, they often think, no. It's about obedience. God will punish us if we're not obedient to the law, rather than seeing the whole framework of the end of Deuteronomy where we're at, which is God lays it out. If you follow moral law, as we've heard Adira espouse, and her parents have before, if we follow moral law, the consequences will be good. And when we do not, the consequences will be bad. Again, people interpret this as if you don't obey God, then you'll be punished. But they're not punishments. They are the beauty of being accountable. They are a beauty of seeing the consequences of your action. And this is how weird I think it is. We see around us hurricanes, we see rains and torrential floods, we see wildfires, we see George Floyd, right? Not so long after Ferguson. Not so long, I remember, like it was yesterday, Rodney King, mass incarceration. We see these horrible, many of them the curses that the Torah actually announces that will happen to us. And many of it, I would imagine, growing up like Adira, like it is raising my own children, I'm imagining they're terrified of these consequences and they lose hope because they're like, well, look at all the bad stuff happening. And what I want to tell them is Gevura is a gift. Seeing the consequences of our actions over the covenantal generational relay race that Adira announced, that is not scary. It is a gift because our tradition gives us the resources to address it. The rabbis think it's amazing that Miriam, who's credited with saying, and I'm not crazy about it, but when Miriam's credited with saying something nasty about Moses, she breaks out in a skin rash. And the rabbis see it as a gift rather than a punishment. And they say things like that don't happen anymore. And there was a special miracle just for Miriam. Can you imagine, the rabbis tell us, if you, I don't know, if you started smoking a cigarette, they use different examples. If you did something that was bad for you and you immediately got a consequence, you didn't have to wait 30 or 40 years to your doctor to tell you. Can you imagine what a gift that would be? You see the consequence and you're like, oh, I'm giving this up right now, right? The doctor's like, Nadav, it seems to me that you're cheating on your wife with your love affair with cheese, right? And I'll say guilty as charged. I have a love affair with cheese. I've been vegetarian for a while, but I'm not vegan. You can't be eating this much cheese. Let me show you your blood work. And let me show you immediately if I was suffering the consequences. And I would immediately say, I'm going to stop. The cries of the shofar, racial injustice, economic injustice, the consequences on our system are not a punishment. They're a call to action. They're a gift to see where the consequences of our actions of the generations that preceded us, not that we rise up and say, I want to protest you previous generations, you were terrible. Yes, they were terrible. They also handed us gifts to solve for these problems. They also did a part and they handed the baton to us. Accountability, consequences, appreciating them as a gift is a part of growing up, and it's a part of entering the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah. Shabbat Shalom. Adira, will you come up and lead us in the Musaf service? Oh, I'm sorry. No, pardon me. Yeah, I meant for you to just learn that in the last 5 minutes. Pardon me, got carried away. Please. Thanks, Elijah. I'm going to ask everyone to rise. We are on page 155 for the closing prayers.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yamad yivrachu v'yamlich malchutei v'chayecha v'yamechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'galal v'zman karib v'yimeru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam le'om le'omaya Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitbar, Vitraman, Vitnase, Vitadar, Vitalel, Vitalal, Shemedi Kudisha, Leila, Mikol Birchata Vishirata, Tushbechata Bene, Amiram Nirma, Vimeru, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah El Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Omel Hasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol Ezorcher Hasdei Avod Umevi Goel Livnei B'neichem Leman Shimo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Fokedu Mashiach Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magin Avraham Ufaked Sarah Atagi Borler Lam Adonai Mechayim Et Yimatarav Lechoshia Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechayim Etim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verafech Olim Umatir Atzirim Umekayem emunato Shenei afar Michamocha ba'al gevurot Umidomer lach Melech memid umechayem Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atal hachayot meti Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye Hametim. 157. Ritzacha v'nakdishim kesov simche maram. Oh, start over. Na ritzacha v'nakdisha kesov siach samchei kodesh. Hamakdishim Simcha v'kodesh Kakatu v'yan v'yecha V'kara ze'el ze b'yamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai tzvaot Melech kol haaretz kivodo Kavodo Malayalam Mesharti B'Shoralim Zeh Lazeh Aye Mekom Kavodo Liomata Baruch Yomeru Mim Komo Hu Yifim Barachamim V'Yachonam Am Yachadim Shemo Erev Babocher B'Chol Yom Tamid V'Abayim B'Ahava Shema Omrim Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Hu Yashvienu, Baracham Avshenit Le'nei Kol Chai, Le'ot Lachem Le'Elohim. Divrei Kochecha Katuv Le'mor. L'dor v'dor nagid, Gad Lecha, L'netzach Netzachim Kedushatcha, Nakdish, V'shiv. Chacha Eloheinu mipinu le'amush le'alam va'ed Ki melech kadol v'kadosh ata Baruch ata Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
158 to 161 or your own personal meditations in silence. Those are documents discontinued. The rest of us are on 181.
Yikadal Yikadashime Rabba, Belmadi Racher Tev, Lich Machute, Vachai Chonav Yemachon of Chaedachal Beit Yisrael, Ba'agalav Izman Kariv Imeru, Yehe Shmira Bamevorach, Leolam Leom Meomaya, Yitbarach Vishtabach Vitfar Vitramam Vitnase, Vitadar Vitala Vitalash Made Kudisha, Leilami Kobechata Bashirata, Tishbachata Benachamata, Ba'agalav Izman Kariv Imeru, Tika Bel Soton Vauton, the Chlo Israel, Kadama Avuhon Dibishmaya Vimeru, Yeheshlama Rabba Min Shemaya, Vachayim Elenu Vel Chlo Israel Vimeru, Seshalom Bimramav, Huya Seshalom, Alenu Vel Chlo Israel Vimeru. Amen.
Ein Eloheinu, page 182. We rise for Elaine 183.
Alenu l'shabeach la'adon hakol la'tet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu keguyei ha'aratzot velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkenu kachem vegor alenu kechol hamonach v'anachnu morim Mishachadinu modim, lifnei melech malchei hamachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Unot hashamayim v'yosei haaretz, u'Moshe yikaro b'shamayim mima'al, u'shchinatu zo, v'gad meromim. Eloheinu Einod Emet Malkeinu Efes Zulato Hakatu Vetorato Yadata Hayom Vehadata Hayom Vehashevota Elevavecha Ki Adonai Hua Elohim Bashamayim Mimah V'al haaretz v'al mitzrayim. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
We may be seated. Beth Israel congregation remembers, among others, the Yortzites this week of David Brotman, Solomon Elkin, Bernice Eskin, Israel Friedman, Michael Gallant, Victor Gallatin, Stan Gertz, Barbara Fern Hammond, Rebecca Hertzberg, Marvin Herzig, Max Kirchner, Daron Lamb, Falik Limbersky, Hannah Levy, Morris Malamud, Stephen Markel, Jerry Markovitz, Helen Nettler, Abe Nissenbaum, Tilly Panish, Max Pear, Michael Perlman, Celia Perlman, Bertine Porras-Sillens, Bonnie Koenig-Sackheim, Bernie Saltzman, Sarah Schneider, David Eduardo Steingart, Frida Schiwack, David Siegel, Saul Slemrod, Ronnie Solomon, Miriam Stryer, Leona Weinthal, and Hannah Zwerdling, as we continue to say Kaddish. For Eli Botkin, Gloria Greenfield, Dr. Stanley Pinsky, Roberta Kirshner, Milt Rockman, Mitchell Kramer, Darwin Bender, Erwin Pollack, Aryeh Greenberg, Harvey Danowitz, Millie Dietrich, Lorraine Rothschild, Michael Zeller, Leslie Robert Axelrod, Andrew Diamond, and Annette Friedman, Thomas Easthope, Daniel Ashley, Alan Checkaway, Al Hermelin, Marcel Pollack, Robin Muscat, Zelig Cutler, Victor Rosenberg, Doris Doctor, Lorraine Nadelman, Nelson Stewart Schaefer, Avram Shore, Mark Lieberman, Bram Shapiro, and now Ruth Neiman Gray and Elaine Stoller. For those who are saying the Kaddish, please rise and recite with me. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach v'alam olam me almaya, yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May their memories continue to bring blessings to this world. Mazel tov to Adira and to your entire family. You behave like an adult, you teach like an adult, you sing like an adult, actually better than some adults. And we invite you to continue to come back and be like so many in your family, regular fixtures in our sanctuary, lead services and lead parts of the service in the future, and to share your words of Torah with us and all the ways that you do. So Mazal Tov to your family, your extended family. Thanks so much for joining us. And people have been joining us by streaming today as well. We have a gift for you. And don't come up and get, well, I'm not masked. So can we do a drop off? It's just a small token of our affection and gratitude for you and your family and your presence with us for your teaching. I just want to encourage everyone. I won't do a long list of announcements, but I ask whether people will please pay very close attention to the communications that are coming forth from Beth Israel at this time. We really do try to send out very few. Memorials we have to send out. That's a proper thing no matter what. But we try not to send out, oh, this is happening, then that's happening. So we sometimes pack a lot in an email, and things are changing as as things go up and down. I want you to pay attention. For example, you're going to get an email shortly, as soon as I write it, that will let you know that we're adding an outdoor service that will be combined with Tashlich. So instead of just meeting for Tashlich at 4 p.m. on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, Neil's going to come, our cantorial soloist, our Shaliach Tzibor, and I'll be there. I'm going to lay out a scavenger hunt for kids who come, and we're going to meet at Gallup Park Playground, which is highly accessible for people and has tons of room to spread out for people's personal comfort. It's really gorgeous. Play areas for kids to play, who really, most of whom our kids will not be indoors this high holy days. And so little things like that we're just adding now, which is, you know what, we're going to have a half-hour service and we're going to bring a shofar blower and do the full shofar service. It's all 5 minutes, but it's extremely affecting. So little things will be added and changes along the way. One of the things you'll hear from us is that we want everyone to be comfortable where they are, so that I don't feel the need to tell you that when you're more comfortable davening from home, it's fully kosher. And I want you to be streaming on our YouTube channel. Some people say it's hard to get on YouTube. I feel fortunate that I pay for this overpriced Xfinity cable system with an old-fashioned box. And it still has a microphone on it. And I pushed the microphone just to test. And I said, Beth Israel Congregation in Ann Arbor on YouTube. And miraculously, we appeared. So that if you have a smart TV or smart cable box, or a Roku or Google Fire or an Apple TV, often you can just type in Beth Israel Congregation Ann Arbor. YouTube, and it'll bring up the services right away. So you can be in a place you're comfortable. And for those who are registered, it'll be singing in the congregation. I understand. And for those who registered who say, maybe I'd like to do it from home, you can do it from home, and you're not required to tell us. We want you to be comfortable with the decisions that you make, and we honor them. I'm going to feel that I'm with everyone who's online at that time. So the other announcements that are coming up, if you want to be helpful to us as we're so close to Rosh Hashanah, at the end of the service, you could take your blue prayer book and your red chumash and bring them and basically stack them in the back of the room or on the table outside, because we're going to be flipping over to Machzorim, to the high holy day stuff, and just a kindness to our staff. We have a wonderful celebration with food today. I'm glad we have an opportunity to do that. But you'll see that we're lucky we're even providing food, and we can do that. And we thank the family for being so generous about it. But we're also doing it outside, and there's really not a lot of room in the tent. So I want to remind you that I'd like to remind all congregants that there are prepackaged food, and if you'd rather not be in the tent or you can't find a place, you're welcome to take your prepackaged food and eat it in a place, bring it home, eat it in a place you're comfortable. We have erected the sukkah. There are no chairs or tables in there right now, but if you want to stand and eat in the sukkah, you'll see that it's just around the slope. So and remember that tomorrow is our pre-Rosh celebration with activities, including decorating the sukkah at 3 p.m. tomorrow, Monday night at Rosh Hashanah, and the full schedule of everything we're doing follows both on the homepage of our synagogue and in the email announcements we'll send out. With that, I'm going to ask, I hope, it looks like it got grabbed, thankfully. So is the candy being passed out? It will be. So Elia, Eliana, and Mariko are passing out the candy. We have until the end of Adon Olam to have it in hand to wish Adira a sweetness in her adulthood, as we continue with Adon Olam on 187.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yeit Nasa, B'hafsakol, Azay Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'yacharei Kichlot HaKol, Levado Yimloch Nara Adon Olam, Vehu haya, vehu hove, vehu yevatifara Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yeit Nasa, B'hafsakol, Azay Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, Vehu echad v'yesh sheni, levan shelo lahachbira Adon Olam, b'li reshit, b'li tachlit, v'lo haus v'hamisra Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yeit Nasa, B'hafsakol, Azay Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'hu Eli, V'chai Goli, V'tzor Havli V'yeit Zara Adon Olam, V'hu Nisi, Umanosli, V'nakasli V'yom Nikra Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yeit Nasa, B'hafsakol, Azay Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'yado Ki Ruhi, V'yeit Isha V'yayira Adon Olam, V'yim Ruhi Geviyati, Adon Ami V'lo Adon
I don't get it. I'm not even.
Okay, Berach Adonai, Yom HaShabbat V'Kedshehu, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Peri HaGafen.
Amen.
Ask everyone to make their own motzi for themselves.